Good afternoon. It is Saturday, and I wanted to make a video that is, it's pretty personal. It's just about some reflections, some things that I did recently that I feel very badly about. The topic is about anger. But before I get to that, I want to say something about my satire that I made about Nicholas Kristof's claim that dogs were raping prisoners in the Israeli prison. And I just have to say, I had to make a satire on it because I think most people realize that that's even impossible for something like that to happen. How do you train a dog to do that? It's just absurd. And the thing about it is that if Kristof had really done his homework, he would find that there would be abuses, because I remember reading about it and listening on Israeli news podcasts about how there had been some abuses in the Israeli prison, and these individuals were punished for it. They were young, and it was after October 7th, and they wanted revenge, and they did some things that would be considered abuse. From what I understand, it wasn't like horrible abuse, but there were some abuses. And if Kristof had, investigated that aspect and also reported that these individuals were punished for that, they were dismissed, and that's what I remember. The funny thing about it is, if you want to really see abuses, really horrible rapes, terrible abuses in prisons, look no further than the United States. I don't see Kristof making any reports about what goes on in our own prisons. But the fact of the matter is, there are abuses in every prison, everywhere around the world. There's nothing surprising about that. And even in Hollywood, when they make movies and guys are in prison, they show things that go on in the prisons that are pretty, realistic. And you know what I'm probably talking about. People that kill one another and, that sort of thing. And if you really want to take a look at horrible torture that goes on in prisons, look no further than the prisons in Iran with their own people, and how they put them in holes and basically bury them in these holes that are with rats and roaches, and they keep them in there without any water, food, or anything. I don't see Kristof making any reports about that. But the point is, there are abuses everywhere. And when you do a report like that, and you have some truth in it, which I'm not denying, maybe there's truth in some of the things that Kristof reported, and then there's lies that he included in the report, and some truth and some lies, and some truth and some lies. When you got it all mixed up with lies, then the whole report should be thrown out the window, okay? You can't have a mix of some truthful revelations and rumors and lies, because then that report has absolutely no credibility. And we used to know this as far as holding a high journalistic standard at the New York Times. But the New York Times sort of has a shady reputation going all the way back to the days when during World War II, when they refused to report what was going on with the Holocaust. So they've been sort of anti-Semitic for a very long time. They have a long history of it. They have a long history of supporting communism. They were supporting Stalin. Stalin murdered something like 30 million people under the purge. So all these college students that think Marxism and communism is so great, why don't they do a little reading on what happened in Russia under Stalin? You know, why don't they do some research on what's known as, quote, the purge? You know, but it's the same kind of idiocy where, particularly in the colleges, where the students buy in to these bumper sticker ideas, you know, and they don't do any reading, they don't do any questioning, and then they feel righteous about it. They feel like they're right regarding the Palestinians. And, you know, this is still going on at the colleges. You know, hate Israel, hate the Jews, blame everything on the Jews, and you see this going around in the world. You know, it's like 1935 all over again, only worse, because now you have I can't define it in any other way, but Tucker has shown it and boasted about his anti-Semitism. He doesn't even hide it anymore. He used to try to deny it. Now he's just out there. I don't know why he doesn't just have a swastika right behind him on his show, because he might as well put it up now that we know where he stands. So he thinks that he's, you know, carrying some percentage of the Trump supporters, and he's not. You know, he's just got a bunch of idiots that are listening to him. Everybody else with any intelligence stopped listening to him, and they no longer subscribe to him. They unsubscribe to his channel, whatever you want to call it. But it's very disconcerting to see how we're back to this thing where blame everything on the Jews. But you know, from the beginning of time, every problem that ever happened from the beginning of time, it's all the Jews. You know, blame it all on them. You know, you know, the Jews own everything. I mean, it's the same stupid rhetoric. You know, the fact of the matter is, more Arabs now own everything, much more so than the Jews. The Arabs have taken over many of the corporate networks and media platforms in entertainment and in the news industry. But I'm not going to get into that. I just want to bring out a point that I did the satire because it was ridiculous when he brought in the thing about being raped by dogs. It was so stupid and absurd and ridiculous that, to my mind, it took the report and reduced it to a satire. So I just, you know, made it into what I think it was: a stupid, ridiculous, absurd claim, and that should be laughed at. It should be just laughed at. It should be a mockery, okay? A mockery. It's a mockery on New York Times. And New York Times, I mean, for them to have published that, it just ruined their whole credibility. Whatever tiny bit of credibility that they have. But anyway, I'm having my afternoon wine, and I wanted to talk about something. You know, in this channel, I have devoted this channel to my beloved Richard, who passed away November 1st, 2025. And it's also my dog's channel. So I think Richard would be happy to know that I'm dedicating this audio journal diary, because I've been trying to explain and just express ideas and reflections on what I've been going through after he passed. And because I know that there are other people out there that have lost their loved ones, and whether it be, one of their children, which would be absolutely devastating. But when you're with someone for nearly half a century and then suddenly they're gone from your life, it's really it's very hard emotionally, and I have been trying to deal with it day by day, and one of the ways that I do deal with it is by praying to Richard and feeling that I think his spirit is with me, and I think his spirit is with his son, and I think that he is in a place of total unconditional love, because once we leave the human body with all of where we get all completely screwed up in a lot of ways, what's left is the purity of the soul. And at the, might say, end of the day, when you do a review and you are a judge of your own life, the question comes up is not how many awards you won, not how much money you earned, not fame, not power, not prestige. All of that, how many things you have, materialism, all of that is nothing. That doesn't even come up. What will be judged by yourself, not by a panel of judges that are saying, okay, now we're going to check and see you did good on this and bad on that. It's you. Your soul will be reviewing your life, and what is going to be the most important thing is how much have you loved in this life? How much love have you given? And how kind have you been? And how compassionate have you been to others? And that is weighed with the other darker side that everybody has, that I have, which is when you lose control of your emotions, you fall into a state of anger, you blow it, essentially. The saying, I lost it. Well, the question is, well, what did you lose? And the answer is you lost your sense of rational understanding. You lost your sense of decorum. You lost your sense of awareness. And that's the key word here. You lost your sense of awareness. And I fell into that a few days ago. I fell into something where I got very angry at this person, and I said things that were terrible and that were wrong, and just out of anger. It came out of anger, without any perspective, without stepping back and taking a breath and saying, wait a minute, okay, this is what you observed, but there are a dozen other ways in which you could have approached this and, presented it in a way where person X would not be offended. Instead, you blew up and you said things that were offensive. And I thought about this and thought, after Richard died, I have been trying to connect with him, and through that connection, through God, and through that connection, trying to feel a sense of unconditional love from him. And I do believe that he has been changing me, that I have changed. I'm not the same person that I was before, because even this blowout that I fell into, I went back to my old habits of, not stepping back, not taking a breath, not, saying, wait a minute, don't fall into that old way of being where you just get mad and angry and say things that you're going to regret later. And I have been pretty good about not falling back into that. I've been trying to, convey and express a sense of forgiveness and a sense of, trying to make some kind of atonement and amendment and reconciliation. And I just fell into this anger, and I got triggered, and I felt later on like that was, and I tried to, just say, take that thing off, and I thought, I blew it. I completely blew it. That is not what Richard would want me to fall into. He might understand why I got upset, but it was my way of dealing with it. It was my reaction that was the problem. And this is what all the spiritual sages have said over the centuries, that be careful how you react to something. If you react without awareness and consciousness, being conscious and aware of what you're doing, then you're like, a stupid madman, just going off like an idiot. And then you regret it, and it only ends up creating a ripple effect, and it will come back to you in some way, And in the past, I might have been like that and not even reflected on it. I might have just blown up, and then I just go on. One thing that I have felt like I've been changing after Richard died is that I stop and I think that unlike this myself before, the way I am now, I had to stop and realize this was wrong, what I did, and maybe in the past I wouldn't have done that, but now I am, thinking about that, and I was realizing that on the bigger picture of things, even with these wars, that it is anger that gets everybody in trouble. It's anger that creates these wars. And what we need more in the world is not anger, but love and apologies. And not fake apologies, not phony apologies, but, sincere apologies from the heart. And that is something that even before Richard died, I always had no problem making apologies. When I knew that I screwed up, I would be the first one at the plate to make an apology. I felt really good about making an apology, if I created any problems. And a sincere apology is very healing. And people that refuse to apologize, and even when they look and someone confronts them with showing that, hey, you were wrong about this, and they still refuse to apologize, they're going to be stuck in that anger, And if we could all try to apologize to one another, it would be very healing. Um, there are people that will make an apology, like I said, but it's surface. It's not real. It's not coming from the heart. And I remember, there were times when I got upset with Richard over one thing or another. And even if I thought I was right, I still wanted to apologize because I didn't want that hanging over me. And I think that is really important. That if you recognize and acknowledge that you've done something to hurt someone, that you've got to make amends in some way. And I'm feeling that now more than ever because I didn't want to go back to that other self of mine, which I kind of learned that from my mom. My mom had a bad temper. She'd go into temper tantrums, but my mom never apologized. Even when she would scream and say terrible things to me, she never apologized. She was something of a narcissist. She always thought she was right, and even when she yelled and screamed and said terrible things that were wrong, she always felt she was right because, that was a part of her that was narcissistic. And I never once got an apology from her in all the years. Whenever she screamed and yelled and put me down, I never got an apology from her. And I wanted to tell her, if you only knew how beautiful an apology can be and how it heals your heart, and if it comes from the heart and it's sincere, it can be very healing for both people, for the one that you hurt and for yourself. But I was thinking about that because I felt like I owe this person a sincere apology. And I'm human, I have my failures. We all do. We all screw up. But if you can reflect on it and learn from it and try not to do it again and try to next time, don't do that. Just, step back. If you're angry about something, if something really pisses you off, give yourself some cooling time before you react. And Richard tried to teach me this because he, as a lawyer and his background as a lieutenant and all the experiences that he had in business, he always knew that it was better to analyze the situation and not overreact. And he was really very good about that. And he used to tell me, even when you're right, and many times you are right, you have to think about how you express that so that it doesn't create ripples. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but there were things that would go on that were that could make Richard upset, but he had a way, a really dignified way, particularly on the ranch with renters, if they did something that was not very good, kind of presenting a problem for him. He just knew how to handle it without his emotions getting carried away. And he always tried to teach me, why, you're very emotional, and that's going to get you into trouble. And it's good to have emotions that you feel, you feel um, emotional about things that um, are important to you. But you don't want the darker emotions, the passions that are associated with anger, and you know you don't want that to kind of take over and blind you. And from my own personal experience, I mean, I'm kind of connecting this with uh, what's going on in the world right now with all the hate towards Israel. um, I'm kind of associating my own personal experience with flying off the handle and realizing that anger does not get you anywhere. And Martin Luther King said it perfectly, so did Mahatma Gandhi. Violence begets violence, anger begets anger, hatred begets hatred, and it becomes a vicious circle, and you can't get out of it because it keeps going on and on. And I saw this video the other day of this Palestinian woman that was screaming out, "Another Holocaust! We want another Holocaust!" Just screaming out with all of her anger. Such a vile thing and so offensive. And I thought, okay, I did that on a personal level on a whole different subject. It wasn't anything related to the politics, but it was on a private, personal level. But I was like that woman in a different situation, expressing this hideous kind of anger that just makes you ugly. It makes you ugly. It belittles you, and it affects your whole being. Your emotions and your heart. It you just don't want to fall into that. And when I saw this woman like screaming that, and I could see her from an objective perspective saying, "What is all this hate about? Will you please stop the hate? Stop the anger, because none of this is ever going to end until people like you stop the anger." And then I could see it objectively with her, but I had to see it objectively with myself as well. And I just think that we're all going to have our review day, our judgment day. And what we're going to take away, like I said, is not the things we own, and not the prestigious titles, and not this or that, but how kind have you been, and how much love have you given, and how much compassion do you have. And I think Richard, through Spirit, is trying to help me to understand that. He tried when he was alive, and maybe, and I did learn from him, but I feel like I'm learning even more from him now, because I know that he's in a place of total unconditional love and compassion. And he is in a place where you don't get angry. You don't judge. You just try to help that person. And I know that's where he's at. You try to help that person to be more understanding and more compassionate and more kind, because that's what lasts. That's the whole key to the meaning of life. And I feel badly about what I did, and it brought me back. I was making some steps forward towards this spiritual life that I'm trying to live in connection with Richard, and I felt like I took like 5 steps back by reacting in a way that um, made me feel like I lost my compassion, I lost my sense of awareness. And that's what anger does. Anger really blinds you, and it makes you into like that stupid Palestinian woman screaming out, "Another Holocaust! We want another Holocaust!" It it makes you look so stupid and pathetic. And anger blinds you. It prevents you from living a life of peace and love. And we all have to try to move in that direction. But boy, I see a lot of hatred out there. And then the way you heal this craziness going on is each person in their own way, in their own lives. They have to stop the anger. You know, and if they blow it, they should at least reflect on it and have some remorse and forgiveness for healing. And that's where I stand. I feel badly what I did, but I hope that I am learning from that not to fall into it again. So I kind of tried to do this parallel, you know, when you get angry with someone in your own private life, you can look at it from the bigger picture as well. When you see these people that are filled with hate and anger, and it only perpetuates more hate and anger. It just doesn't solve any. Name a single time when anger has solved the problem. It never has. The only way that problems have been solved between people is when they sit down and make apologies and say, okay, you know, I'm sorry we did this. You're sorry for doing that. Let's try to make amends and try to find another way and stop being so angry and stop with all the hate. I did have, you know, my bumper sticker. I had a little bumper sticker that I put on my car that just said 2 words, "Be kind." But then I had to take it off because I heard that Ellen DeGeneres started that thing, and she is just the opposite. And I didn't want to be associated with her because she talked about this be kind thing, but meanwhile she has a reputation of being a horribly mean to so many people in our staff and everything. And so I thought, you know, I can't have that because people are going to associate me with her. So I put dog lover instead. But anyway, I just wanted to have that little discussion with you. If you feel yourself getting angry, be careful about instantly reacting. That's the whole key. You know, don't just instantly react. Try to step back. Try to have a cooling period where you chill out, and then if you want to express what it is that upset you, find a way to do it without offending the other person, because that will go a much longer way than by blowing up and offending the person and insulting the person. That goes nowhere. It just goes nowhere. It doesn't solve anything. So I'm doing this, you know, introspection. I'm trying to ask Richard to help me, to guide me, to be more spiritual, to be more living in a place of kindness and unconditional love, and he has helped me to make this apology. So thank you for listening. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.